Hello, my ecom learners. Welcome to another video lesson on another components of Chapter 1. Come on, let's learn together. Watch this. Scope, limitations, and delimitations are three terms that address the details of a research project. The term scope refers to the problem or issue that the researcher wants to study. Limitations is a term used for constraints that impact the researcher's ability to effectively study the scope of the project, while the limitations state what the researcher will only cover. I'll discuss their differences further as we talk about today's lesson, which is the scope and the limitations. Now, let's talk about how you could write an effective scope. Bear in mind that a good scope statement will answer the following six questions. The first one is why? Why is there a need to study on the research topic? So you should mention the general aims and objectives or the purpose of the research. What? What is the subject to be investigated and the included variable? Where? Here you have to, of course, mention the location or setting of the study, where the data will be gathered, and to which entity the data will belong. Next, we have the when. It refers to the time frame within which the data is to be collected. We also have the who. This deals with the subject matter of the study and the population from which they will be selected. The last one is the how the research is to be conducted, including a description of the research design, the methodology, the research tools, and analysis techniques. So, when we talk about the research design, it states whether it is experimental research, qualitative research, or a case study. To make things as clear as possible, you should also state why specific variables were omitted from the research scope and whether this was because it was a delimitation or a limitation. Now let's deal with the difference between delimitations and limitations. The limitations refer to the boundaries of the research study based on the researcher's decision of what to include and what to exclude. They narrow your study to make it more manageable and relevant to what you are trying to prove. Meanwhile, limitations relate to the validity and reliability of the study. They are characteristics of the research design or methodology that are out of your control but influence your research findings. Because of this, they determine the internal and external validity of your study and are considered potential weaknesses. In other words, limitations are what the researcher cannot do, and the limitations are what the researcher will not do. Both are important because they help to put the research findings into context. And although they explain how the study is limited, they increase the credibility and validity of a research study. So, what is scope and delimitation in research? The scope and delimitations of a research defines the topic and boundaries of the research problem to be investigated. The scope details how in depth your study is to explore the research question and the parameters in which it will operate in relation to the population and time frame. The delimitations of a study are the factors and variables not to be included in the investigation. In short, they are the boundaries the researcher sets in terms of study duration, population size, and type of participants, and more. Look at this example. As shown in the example, You could understand that the scope of the research focused on identifying how effective the chosen LDM of ABIs are, according to the perceptions of the senior high school students. It is also obvious that the study is a qualitative one as to the number of selected respondents. The delimitation is also mentioned, and that is, the study would not talk about the impacts of other modalities which are not employed in the school. And that is a simple example of research scope and delimitations. For the discussion of the next part of Chapter 1, watch the next video lesson. Thank you for listening and studying with me, my econ learners. I'll have you again in the next video lesson. God bless, keep on learning, and always wear a happy heart.